AskReddit. Redditors who have worked around death burial, what's your best ghost story? Number 1. I used to be a security guard at a hospital. One night, while doing my rounds, I went into the surgery wing and was walking down a hallway when I saw a doctor looking at the whiteboard where all the scheduled surgeries are written down. I said, "Hello, doctor," and kept going. The doctor didn't say anything back, just kept studying the whiteboard. When I got back to the security office, I was telling one of the guys that's been there for years about how I greeted this doctor, and he didn't say anything back. I asked if that's the asshole they told me to watch out for. I was asked where I saw him, and I said the surgery ward, and he gave me a smirk. He then explained that the surgery ward closes at 9 p.m. and that all patients are moved into the monitoring wards. There should be no one there. He then asked me if this doctor was studying the schedule board. I said yes, and he then told me that I just met Dr. Lewis City. Apparently, some many years ago, one of the surgeons went up to the helipad and jumped off the building. Seems like he never stopped working though. That's a dedicated doctor right there. Number 2. Junior doctor on the wards, doing a night shift, called to verify a death. Enter the private bay. It's all a bit grim, slightly gloomy room. Patient is lying there, old man, looks peaceful. Start my checks, stethoscope out, no signs of active respiration. No heart sounds. Rub the sternum for response. None. Time to get closer and check the CNS for any signs of life. I lift the eyelids up, reach for my pen torch, balancing closer to the patient. That's when it happens. The patient lurches forward, his face now inches away from mine. I scream. Nurses rush in and ask what's happened. What was that noise? Why so pale? You look like you've seen a ghost. That's when I realize. I leant in too close and my leg brushed against the bed controls, raising the bed. Nurses couldn't stop laughing as they offered to make me a cup of tea. Number 3. My grandfather was extremely sick in the days leading up to his death. He'd worked with asbestos for all his working life and had an extremely debilitating form as a result of it. He couldn't speak, and he hadn't spoken for a month leading up to his death. He couldn't even communicate. On the day of his death, he looked at my mother and said, "The angel is back." My mother was stunned. She asked what he meant, and he said, "The angel is back, and this time he wants me to come with him." My mother looked at the corner of the room where he was looking, turned back to him, and said, "Dad, there's nobody there." He didn't respond. He died that night. That was 20 years ago, and my mother never spoke of it again. She told me the story when I was old enough, just like she told my brothers, but my sister never got to the age where she was old enough. She succumbed to her disease when she was 7, after battling it her entire life. And on the days leading up to her death, she kept speaking about this butterfly who would visit her. My brothers and I would sit with her and nod along. We kind of just thought she'd developed this imaginary friend to help her through what she was struggling with. One day, she shot up and told us the butterfly is back, and he wants me to follow him. I saw my mother's face drop. She'd made the decision not to tell my sister she was dying, and my sister just believed she was going through a rough patch like she often did, not that the doctors had told my mother it was terminal. But my sister said, in the next second, "I'm going to die, aren't I?" That's what the butterfly said. He told me I'm going to die. My mother admitted to her that, yes, she was going to die. She said, "Oh. Okay." Then laid down and died, with my brothers, my mom, and I cuddling her in bed. I don't know what I believe about the afterlife, but I have to think there must be one. That there's some truth behind the legend of the Grim Reaper, that at some point, something comes to lead all of us away from life. Because otherwise, I have no way of coming to terms with what I've experienced. Number 4. When my cousin was 18, he was in a bad wreck. Him, his girlfriend, and her sister were all pronounced dead at the scene. The police arrived to inform my aunt, his mom, and she asked that he be sent to a specific funeral home. While they were preparing to embalm him, he raised up and asked, "Where the hell am I?" The funeral director said it was the first time he ever had to go home and change pants. I should add that the top of his head was open and his brain was exposed. He was sent to the hospital. The same police officer came to my aunt's to tell her he was not dead but in the hospital. They thought he'd be in a vegetative state. But a few weeks later he walked out of the hospital. My aunt said it was the worst and best day of her life. Fraslin Dajamit heavens to Betsy Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, I would have needed a new pair of pants as well. Number 5. I used to be a driver for a funeral home corporation. Like, drive the hearse and pick up the bodies. Never had anything creepy happen, a few funny things, a few traumatic things. In general, it was a chill job. However, I did get incredibly uncomfortable one night picking up a man who died at home. He still had the defibrillator leads on his chest and his eyes were closed, which is unusual because the eyes are always open. He just looked like he was asleep or unconscious. Not rigid or pale or anything. I just had this sinking feeling for about half an hour in traffic that he was going to suddenly gasp and wake up in the body bag. Then it hit me. That would be the coolest thing ever. I'd take him home and he'd be back with his family. So I just kind of drove slowly and turned up some music and sang along and talked to him. When I got him to the funeral home, I left him out of the cooler for about an hour while I did paperwork and played on my phone. When I got another call, I checked on him and his limbs had started to stiffen. I was kind of bummed. I put him in the cooler and went on my next call. Number 6. I used to work on an oncology ward as a nurse. Our side rooms were kept for end-of-life patients on palliative care, and one patient that we had been nursing for a good few weeks died early one morning. Last offices had already been done by the night staff and the patient moved to the hospital morgue, so all that remained was to clear the room of personal belongings and tidy up. I sent a student nurse that I was mentoring at the time to do this whilst I got on with the drug round. The student had known the patient fairly well and was comfortable with this job. About 10 minutes after, a colleague came to me and told me that my student had come flying out of the side room white as a sheet and was sobbing in the staff room. I went to find out what the problem was, and the student told me she had been clearing out sink area in the bathroom, had glanced up and seen the deceased patient reflected in the mirror looking at her over her shoulder. My student was a sensible girl, not given to hysterics, but for the remainder of her placement on that ward she would not go near that side room. Number 7. My grandfather died a while back. One day me and a bunch of my cousins were playing in the front yard rural area, since on weekends all the family likes to hang out together. So we're out having fun and see Lolo grandfather walking towards the house. We all greet him and he smiles at us. He walks up the porch into the house and hangs his hat by the door. We continue playing until we hear crying from the inside of the house and my uncle driving fast up the driveway. We all rush in to see what's going on and see everybody bunched up in the kitchen crying, telling us that Lolo died early that morning and they just found out he lives a few towns away. We looked at each other and told the grown-ups we just saw him come into the house. They didn't believe us and we told them that he really did not that long ago, and he even hung up his hat by the door. So everybody rushes to the door and his hat was hanging right where we said it was. He doesn't ever go anywhere without that hat. So me and my cousins are running all over the house calling for him while our parents are so quiet and freaking out. He actually did die earlier that morning and my grandmother couldn't find his hat anywhere in their house. We left the hat where it was and nobody ever touched it. Number 8. My roomie best bud is a mortician, and I'm around the funeral home a fair amount myself and know the staff pretty well. I've spent the night there before. Nothing weird happens there. I have had some experiences I can't explain, so I was a little surprised none of the staff ever had an odd experience, especially since some of them do believe in ghosts and whatnot. But they told me, if ghosts were real, why in the world would they linger at a funeral home? It's just a transition space, like an airport. No one wants to just stay in the damn airport. Haunt the place you died, or the people you love, or the home you never want to leave, or however it works, if it works. Who would want to linger in a funeral home they have no attachment to, that their body only visited after they already were gone? Number 9. I used to work as a nursing assistant in assisted living communities. Usually when a resident started to need hospice, they were transferred out to a higher level of care, so I didn't see death for a long time. When I first started, my favorite resident, let's call her Marilyn, would play Scrabble with me. She was completely alert and oriented. Sometimes she likes to sit quietly with an iPod shuffle clipped onto her vest and these huge headphones. She loved music. Slowly she started to decline. I would help her get ready for bed, and she would get upset when she forgot how to do something. The only thing that calmed her down was playing music off my phone. She liked Frank Sinatra and the Beatles. Her independent ability declined rapidly, and soon she was bedridden. Still, loved listening to music. This was during COVID, and her quality of life was diminishing so quickly that we didn't transfer her out. She had an apartment at the facility with all her belongings where she was comfortable. By the end, her dementia had progressed to the point that she couldn't remember how to swallow. Marilyn passed away with me, the head nurse, and her family at her bedside in her apartment unit 202. I did her post-mortem care afterwards, styled her hair how she liked to wear it, even clipped her little iPod onto her shirt. A few days after she died, a woman in 203, her neighbor, kept wandering into the lobby during night shift, always at 3 a.m. She complained of loud music coming from Unit 202. That apartment was vacant, just full of Marilyn's belongings. She said the music was so loud it was deafening. Whenever the night shift worker went to check, he didn't hear anything. Not really creepy, more sad. I miss Marilyn. Number 10. I have several stories from when I worked as a mortuary transport tech. The job was basically transporting the deceased from where they were to where they needed to go. Turns out dead people can have a lot of appointments. One time, though, I had an experience I've never forgotten. I was dropping someone off at the science donation place. This is when you donate your body to science and they take it from there. So I wheeled in the deceased, unlocked the freezer, and did all my stuff I had to do in there. I placed him on the board, got the lift out, and placed him on the shelf. The interesting thing about the freezer was that most everything, once it's processed, was wrapped in this blue tape type thing. And you could definitely tell what was inside. Legs, hands, feet, etc. Kind of interesting to me at the time. Anyway, I shut the freezer and locked it back up, and started wheeling the gurney back over to the garage door. The science drop-off and processing area was a big L shape, with the freezer off to the larger long portion, and then you turn the corner and there's desks and filing cabinets and whatnot. I about had a heart attack as I turned the corner, and there's just this guy standing there examining files in the file cabinet. Looked just like you or me. Dressed modernly, but out of place for what people normally wear back there. I stopped and said that he'd have to forgive me, but he almost gave me a heart attack. It didn't look like he heard me at all, or even knew I was there. I should mention this was also about 1 a.m., and I'd never seen anyone at the place this late. So I said, "Well, sorry if I startled you or anything," and went on about my finishing up stuff. Got the gurney back in the van, closed and locked the large garage door from the inside, all the while this guy is just standing there, staring at an open file in front of him, not paying any attention to me. I had to use the bathroom, so I told him that's where I'd be going and I'd be right back. Again, no response. I thought maybe he's deaf and couldn't hear me. So I went to the bathroom and came back to the garage, and the guy is gone, but the file cabinet is still open. I didn't know where he went, and I hadn't heard anyone walk down the hallway past the bathroom. I checked and made sure everything I was responsible for was still locked, and it was. So I just announced that I was going to be leaving and locking up to set the alarm. No response. And that's what I did, and left. I'm not sure who he was, or is, or what happened. But it was definitely an odd experience, and one I still remember perfectly. I have a few other memories about my time at the job, if anyone else wants to hear. Nothing like what happened above, though. Number 11. I work in a cardiac ICU. We have quite a lot of death around here. That being said, we had one patient that comes to mind. I'll call him Greg G., fake name. Greg was on the unit for months. He fought very hard to stay alive every day, and to his credit he was getting better for a good space of time. Greg was fairly old. Late 70s or early 80s. The thing is, he initially looked very young and acted very hip. He became a meme around the unit, and everyone loved him because he was an old white dude who loved rap, Tupac and Biggie, and would throw gang signs sarcastically as a nonverbal K that he was feeling okay. He had a trach in, so he couldn't talk. He also had his family bring mood lights into his room that synced with his music. I kid you not, his room was playing rap and rave mode sometimes. We called him DJ Greggy G, and he loved it. Unfortunately, he took a turn for the worse. His condition deteriorated rapidly and ultimately he died. We were devastated as a unit. His family let us keep his mood lights, and to this day we keep them plugged in at the nurse's station. However, one day the mood lights turned off. We were saddened. Nobody could get them working. But then, they turned on. We were happy. And then they started flashing super irrationally. Then we heard the patient that was in Greg's old room start screaming. We went in to check on her. She was a confused old lady who would say some pretty wild things, but this one was weird. She said that she was watching the flashing lights in the hall. She could see them from her room, to be fair. Then she said that she saw a silhouette of a man casted into the wall from the lights. Then, she started spasticity yelling, "Tell Greg to leave. It's not his room anymore. Tell Greg to go." There is no way she knew it was Greg's room. And with her memory being the way it was, there is also no way she would remember even if she did get told. Kinda spooky. Number 12. I am an ICU RN. We had a septic patient in the unit. She was 29 weeks pregnant. She went into labor on my shift and we delivered her baby, stillborn. I did post-mortem care on the baby, retrieved the proper transport container, and walked the baby down to the morgue. It was the middle of the night. I'm in an elevator alone. I hear a baby start wailing. I absolutely lose my shit and rip open the cover, and just as I go to zip down the bag, I hear a calming male voice say, "Hush, little one, I've got you, no need to cry." The crying stopped immediately. Shaking, I opened the bag and saw exactly what I expected to see, a deceased 29-week-only baby. I am a big bearded 40-year-old ICU nurse, and that was the scariest shit I've ever experienced. No one believes me to this day. I don't even want to speculate what the crying or the voice was. God. Even typing that out, I felt my chest tightening. Number 13. I work in long-term enhanced care. People don't get better, but we keep them comfortable. A couple stories I can think of. 1. A husband and wife, both with severe, almost nonverbal dementia, in the same room but different beds. I have my back to the husband as I'm turning the wife who is facing him. Suddenly her eyes get wide and she looks terrified. She says, "He doesn't look very good with his face blue like that." I'm like, "Oh shit, did he die?" But when I turned around, he was alive and sleeping. I don't know what that woman saw. 2. A tall shadow man on one specific unit. Multiple people have seen it, some even following it into rooms thinking it's a patient, but then no one's there. 3. There was a man who had a cardiac event while sitting on the toilet. He fell forward and put a hole in the bathroom wall. He died. Soon after, a new woman moves into the room after everything is fixed. She comes out to the nurse's station one night pissed off. She says, "Who's going to tell that man to get out of my room? And when are they fixing the giant hole in the bathroom?" 4. A very nice family was sitting with a resident while he died. The man had been basically comatose for 2 days already. The sister comes out and asks for a Bible. This was not a religious family. She said he had sat straight up, eyes bugged out, and started screaming, then flopped back down. I was like, "Say no more," and found her a Bible. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. If you would, go ahead and give that like button a smack and the subscribe button a smash for more videos. Smack and smash. See ya.